everybody. Welcome to Weighing In with Andy Hamilton and David Mirkatani. I'm Andy Hamilton, coming to you from the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum in Waterloo, Iowa, joined from St. Louis by David Mirkatani. David, how's everything down south today?
Everything's good, man. Sun is shining, getting some things done before I head down to Tulsa for the weekend.
It's awesome. You're going to have junior duels. We had cadet duels this past weekend. I'm going to be here in Waterloo this week. Big week at the Gable Museum. Hall of Fame weekend. Wrestling camp going on right behind me in the room in the Gable training facility, training learning center. So that's going on. Hall of Fame weekend, golf outing. Lots of college Division I coaches going to be coming in from that. Stephen Neal is going to be on the guest list, as well as some former NFL and other professional athletes that are going to be coming to town for that. Usually quite a crowd shows up every year for that, quite a guest list. So no different this year. As you mentioned, you're going to be at junior duels. We got those on Track Wrestling this week. We had cadet duels last week. Lots of stuff going on in the wrestling world. Abdul Rashid Sajalayev gets taken to the wire at Russia Nationals. Steve Blyce on the move. Patricio Lugo possibly, maybe likely, headed to Iowa. Mike Poeta going back to Illinois. Kevin Jackson going back to USA Wrestling. David, where do you want to get this started this week?
Maybe let's talk about KJ first. I mean, we were just at World Team Trials a week and a half ago. So he was obviously there coaching a few guys.
Yeah, so Kevin Jackson heading back to USA Wrestling, going to take the freestyle developmental job that was formerly held by Brent Metcalf. So a little bit of a trade going on between USA Wrestling and Iowa State at this point. I don't know if there are any players to be named later involved, but
future draft pick,
Kevin
right?
Jackson. Yeah, Kevin Jackson on the move back to USA Wrestling. So, David, what are your thoughts on move for USA Wrestling and for Kevin Jackson?
Well, I think I'm friends with Kevin. I lived with his brother for a year at Iowa State. I love Kevin Jackson. He's an awesome guy. And, his energy is really good. I mean, he's a really positive person. And, I was sad to see how it ended for him at Iowa State. And I'm really happy for him. I feel like this is probably a better fit for him. I don't know how much he enjoyed all the other stuff that goes along with collegiate wrestling, all the administrative stuff, all the, just all the stuff that goes with that, as opposed to just coaching super elite guys. And I think he's done a good job with super elite guys in the past. And obviously, he's got a relationship, established up there in Colorado Springs where they know what to expect from him. And, when you combine, his new job, Joe Russell's new job, Gary Mayab's new job, and, I got a chance to talk to Cody Bickley a week or so ago. It's very, for guys like us that are fans but not, making a lot of things happen, it's exciting. I mean, I think, USA Wrestling is heading in the right direction. I mean, you had a great interview with David Taylor, and, I mean, to think that a guy as good as David Taylor, a guy as good as Kyle Dake, that some of those kind of guys, those are our alternates. It's exciting. I'm happy for Kevin. I really am. I shot him a text, and I'm happy for him.
Well, let's work backward on the list here. We talked about Mike Poeta. And you roll back about a month ago, we talked at length about Mark Perry leaving Illinois for Iowa. And now Illinois has found his replacement, Mike Poeta, heading back to his alma mater. They bring in a guy that middleweight type of guy. So, we wondered what Mark Perry's departure would mean for Isaiah Martinez and a training situation there. So Illinois addresses it from that end. Also connections to the recruiting world with Mike Poeta and his club. They're based in Illinois, obviously leaving that now, but there's that connection there. David, from a get standpoint, how would you rate this one for Illinois in terms of replacing Mark Perry?
It's almost like, like the NBA draft is coming up, right? And like the NFL draft was, a couple months ago. It looks great. I think it could be great. I think it really comes down to, do they make inroads on Illinois recruiting? And we talked about this about a month ago probably, when we talked about Mark leaving, going to Hawkeye. They got to get the best guys in the state. I mean, that's what Pennsylvania, Penn State, they're doing. Ohio State is doing. Closer to home here, Missouri is doing. You don't see very many good kids leave Iowa, either Iowa, Iowa State, Northern Iowa. I mean, and that's the formula. You can do all the data mining you want. I mean, I've looked all this stuff up. Every team that wins nationals has won it with at least 4 big point getters that were in-state guys. And Illinois has enough guys. I mean, you're better at rattling off those names than me. But in the last even 5-6 years, you can look at all the guys that scored points at nationals, and they had just been on Illinois' team. They'd easily be a top 8 team with just those guys. And then you add in a Jesse Delgado. You add in an Isaiah Martinez. You add in a Zach Brunson, those kind of guys. And the other thing is, those guys are cheaper because you start with the in-state tuition advantage. So when you get those guys, it gives you a chance to get 1 or 2 more guys. And then if you miss, your misses aren't as bad because you've got depth. So, Paula's got a lot of connections in the state of Illinois, and, was an absolute beast when he wrestled. So I think it's good. And he's he's still a young guy, still a lot of energy. So I think that's great too. I mean, what are you hearing, on your end about things? What's the perception of the hire?
I haven't heard a lot. Been focused on some other stuff going on, obviously Cadet Duals and Junior Duals, and kind of unplugged a little bit from that type of angle. But, on the surface, I mean, all the points that you just made, I think are very valid, that, that's where it starts for Illinois, right, is keeping the in-state kids home. You're talking about it. And if I'm not mistaken, Illinois, I want to say, is the second highest participation numbers nationally. And you mentioned that there's a lot of kids going out of state that are having a lot of success for Illinois out of state, they're having from Illinois having a lot of success out of state. You just think, Yep, exactly. You think, just off the top of my head right now, looking at some of the kids even here this year, Austin Gomez heading to Iowa State. Jason Renneria going to Nebraska. You look back
Jacob
at
Warner.
Jacob Warner going to Iowa. Yep.
Can you imagine if Illinois' recruiting class had those 3 kids, just those 3 kids, and throw in a Jamie Hernandez? Let's say they got those 4 guys.
Austin O'Connor.
Okay, those 5 guys, right? And they're not. None of them are at the same weight, right? So theoretically, you could get those guys. That's easily a top 5 recruiting class.
Yep.
You got to get one of them, right? So
Patrick Bruckey's going to Princeton.
Yeah.
Norfleet, Cordell Norfleet going to Arizona State. So you look, Jamie Hernandez going to North Carolina. Michael McGee going to Old Dominion. You got to go down, and in fact, what did we just rattle off? 1, 2, 3, 4,
7 or 8 guys.
5, 6, 7, 7 of the top 70 kids in the country on Intermat's top 100 list from Illinois, and none of them are going to the University of Illinois.
Yeah, and you get to look at the perception, like I saw Coleman Scott a week and a half ago, and Coleman Scott was a Pennsylvania guy. He was the Dave Schultz Junior Award winner, and he went to Oklahoma State. I don't think that would happen now. If Penn State was Penn State now, I don't think Oklahoma State goes into Pennsylvania and gets him. I just don't think that happens. And here's the other, these schools are not scared to go into Pennsylvania. They don't, or into Illinois, excuse me. They don't feel like it's a waste of time. I mean, when I was recruiting, I hardly went into Iowa because there's 19 junior colleges that wrestle there. I'm like, that kid's going to find a home somewhere. And the difference between in-state and out-of-state at that level is really high. It's like double. So it's just, they got to close the borders. You know what I mean? Tom Ryan did it. Kale did it. You know, John's done it. I mean, I think, you know, John's going to have more battles with Lou Rosselli. You know, I mean, you know, they're going to keep those kids. You know, Brian Smith has done it for the most part. You know, I mean, everybody lets one or two guys get away, but like you said, 7 of the top 70, if I'm quoting you correctly, and they didn't get one of them.
Yep.
I mean, that can't happen. I mean, like, the kids that get away have to be the exception, not the rule. So, you know, my answer would be whoever can make that happen, they've got guys there that can coach and teach. And if not, I mean, you can bring in 1 million young guys to come work out with them through, you know, the RTCs. So, yeah, I hope they're successful. It's a program that needs to be successful. I mean, you're winning. You know, I know they didn't win Greco, but they won Cadet Freestyle. They're the favorites to win Junior Duals. They're the favorites to win Fargo. I mean, those things, on any real level, they need to be correlated, right? I mean, if you have one of the 5 best high school programs in the country, you shouldn't have the 25th best collegiate program in the country. So.
Yep, and we're going to come back to Cadet Duals and Junior Duals and talk more about Illinois here later in the show. While we're on the topic of college wrestling, David, one transfer on the move, another transfer likely on the move. Actually, Patricio Lugo said told me last week, he will transfer from Edinboro. Highly likely that he ends up at Iowa at this point. He said Iowa is the front runner, really likes what's going on there. Impressed by the Mark Perry move. That was something that caught his attention and said he was really kind of captivated by the intensity of the program. So Patricio Lugo has a red shirt next year that he could use, 2 years of eligibility after that, a potential seamless transition there if he winds up at Iowa indeed from Brandon Sorensen to Lugo. If that materializes, certainly a good gift for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, right. I mean, a guy who hasn't wrestled great at nationals, but had, you know, great regular seasons, and I mean, did really well out at 15 Vegas. You know, beat Sorensen in the duel, and as we talked about when that duel happened, that wasn't lucky. I mean, he won the takedown battle. I mean, I think he won either 2 out of 3 in regulation. And then Sorensen got the one late with the ride out, and that made the difference to get it to overtime. And then he took him down again, so it ended up being 3 out of 4. So I'm kind of surprised. I had talked to some people that thought he's probably going to stay put, but you know, nobody bats 1,000 on those things. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually goes. And Iowa's an interesting fit because you can't imagine they have a lot of money laying around. I don't know how that all works out, but you know, it'll be interesting to see.
Also, another transfer on the move to the Big Ten, Steve Blyce, 2-time NCAA qualifier from Northern Illinois. And Minnesota announced last week that he is going to become a Gopher. So the Gophers pick up one in the middle of their order. Did you get a chance to watch much of Steve Blyce this year, David? I know he's a guy that had been in the rankings throughout the year, posted some big wins. I think kind of hovering in that 10 to 15 range most of the year, I think. What kind of kid do you think this is from Minnesota?
I only watched a match or two, and, you know, with the last name like Mercatani, you could think I could pronounce a one-syllable name right, so I'm glad you corrected me because I've been calling him Bleeze all year. So I think he's a grinder, right? It kind of feels like he fits into what Minnesota does, and I think all this movement, what you're seeing from kids are, and it goes all the way down to the Little League and these, you know, these schools and camps and academies, like everybody's really starting to understand the importance of training partners and drill partners. And I mean, I think that's really why that's why guys go. That's why Alabama signs 85-star recruits every year, you know, in football. Like this. So Minnesota's team is going to be really sneaky good. And I don't think Brandon Agam has probably gotten enough credit for, you know, them kind of surviving all that turmoil with J-Rob and the investigation and all that. And that, you know, that program had a good season, 2 finalists, you know, and the cupboard's not bare. It's not like they graduated all those guys. I mean, Lezak's back. I mean, they got a couple other guys back. They went and got Gable Stevenson as a verbal. I mean, they're sneaky good, and Minnesota's always kind of, at least maybe in my mind, they're not the team you talk about all year, and then at the end of the year, a lot of times in the past, they're the ones hanging out in the top 5 or 6, so I think Brandon Agam deserves a lot of credit. I really do.
Absolutely. To salvage what was going on there. And then, as you mentioned, the recruits that are on the way, Jake Aller flipped from Iowa State to Minnesota. I mean, he was the guy that wanted to grow to, I remember when he committed to Iowa State in the fall telling me that he grew up a Gopher fan and just the uncertainty at Minnesota made it hard to go there. Well, then, months later, you got the uncertainty at Iowa State. He flips back to Minnesota. So they're getting him, a good guy in the middle of the order, 65, probably 65, 74, somewhere in there. I would venture to guess that he'll wind up. Also, Daniel Kirkfleet, a younger kid, sophomore, 220 pounds. He wrestled at 220 at Folk Style Nationals, rolled through that. Probably 197 pounder, I would guess, in college. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch him, David, but he is.
I have not.
Super athletic, long, athletic build, and moves really well. Got a lot of good stuff, and so we've been accustomed the last 20 years or so seeing Minnesota just be loaded in the upper weights, and certainly with Kirkfleet and Stevenson, Aller. Looks like they're going to be strong for years to come there. And then, you talk about what's going on in Illinois, and maybe this is a good segue to our next topic as well, since these two states duked it out at Cadet Duals throughout the weekend. But, man, Minnesota continues to produce top-flight kid after top-flight kid. So many kids coming out of the Pinnacle Club up there and Jared Lawrence and those guys up there doing a tremendous job with, grooming kids and getting them ahead of the curve. Man, the Illinois-Minnesota scraps over the weekend or over last weekend at the Cadet Duals were phenomenal to watch. Cadet Duals, Greco-Roman, Minnesota tops Illinois in a 40-38 duel. Tremendous action throughout that. Just a really fun duel to watch. Super intense. And then Illinois comes back in freestyle and rolls through the tournament. I think Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, Travis Johnson had it in his story on Track Wrestling for us. They won 94 out of, let's see if I can find it in the story. 94 out of 119 matches Illinois won.
Yeesh.
In the freestyle tournament. And then Illinois went 10-7 in the finals against Minnesota. Another really fun duel to watch there. Just a lot of good action, a lot of great back and forth, high-level kids. There's some highlight clips on Track Wrestling's Twitter account from that, as well as in Travis's story on the homepage and also video interviews of that. David, did you get a chance to watch any of the Cadet Duals?
I just saw, I'm getting clips about how the Missouri kids are doing because I'm friends with a lot of those guys. But I did see, the box score of how those duels went. And, I mean, it's impressive because Illinois had a firm grasp on these dual cadet and junior duels. And, Minnesota's a state that really they emphasize Greco. I mean, that was a state that Gary Mayev mentioned, one of the first states he was going to go to build up the Greco program from the grassroots level. And Minnesota Storm and all the guys they've had up there throughout the years. And, and it's kind of a tangent, but not really. You have all these young kids in Minnesota. Minnesota's another school that, kind of going back to the Illinois conversation, that seems like they keep their best kids in state. Those kids don't leave. They do what they got to do to get them. So, yeah, I mean, and then I think Illinois ended up winning the freestyle. Is that correct?
Yeah. Illinois rolled through freestyle. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They just got a machine going up there. I mean, it's super impressive. And, you think like a guy like Sean Bourmet leaves and, okay, they're going to take a hit. and everybody pulls together. I mean, when I go to Fargo, you know, it's almost misleading recruiting some of those kids because they're so well coached. You kind of wonder, okay, well, they get to college and everybody's going to be well coached. So, you know, how much are they winning matches just on coaching? So it's, you know, it's really interesting. So, yeah, I mean, those were, and I'm hoping to see some duels like that, you know, with the juniors this weekend. I think there'll be some great matchups, and, you know, a lot of these schools, their states rather posted their rosters, and it looks like the potential for some of these matchups is going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And just rewinding real quick, 1 point, Cadet Duals, that's a 5th straight title for Illinois in freestyle. If you rewind to now the last 7 years, Illinois has won 11 of the 14 titles combined in freestyle and Greco-Roman at Cadet Duals. Moving ahead to junior duels, as you mentioned, the rosters starting to trickle in on track wrestling a little bit. Some of the headliners this week, Oregon bringing Travis Whitlake, the cadet world bronze medalist. Ohio has some studs, Dylan D'Amelio, Mitch Moore, Jaden Maddox, who's Ohio State bound, Missouri recruit Jared Campbell, Kevin Vo, the heavyweight, who had been committed to Boise State, going to land at South Dakota State. He's the heavyweight on the Ohio roster, so Ohio's going to be pretty strong as well. Michigan bringing Ben Kamali, Rayvon Foley, Ben Freeman, Cam Amin, just to name a few. Missouri, you're familiar with some of these guys. You had some of them at the Border Brawl. Connor Brown, Cameron and Colin Valdivias, Cody Phippen, some of the headliners on that Missouri squad. Iowa going to have Tristan Lara, the Northern Iowa recruit, Aiden Reeves, Fargo All-American, Kyle Biscaglia, Drew West. So those are some of the headliners. We're going to have a lot more names to watch in the days to come. That's going to get started Wednesday down in Tulsa. So with Greco-Roman. David, you're going to be down there. Any thoughts on what you're, I guess, first of all, what are you most looking forward to seeing down there in Tulsa?
It was my favorite meet to recruit. It was easier to recruit than Fargo because you're not running around all over the place. The other thing is at Fargo, everybody thought they were going to go Division I. And, you know, you get these guys and it's a little more realistic. And you can follow the flow of a duel. You know, and you and I talked about this, and one of the reasons you liked wrestling was that, like, if you watched a bad basketball game, you were stuck there the whole time. You know, wrestling match, you know, if this duel gets out of hand and there's not any more really marquee matchups, you can move over to another mat. And, you know, I'm anxious to, you know, sit down with Kevin Crutchmer again and I just think there's going to be a ton of good matchups, and not all these lineups are posted. I mean, I don't know, you know, like if we're going to see Fix or see some of these guys, but it's, you know, Nebraska's got some good kids coming in. I just think the matchups are going to be really cool. And actually, Team Ohio is training in St. Louis tonight on their way over, and I'm actually going to get a chance to go visit with those guys. So I think I'm a wrestling geek like you are. I'm just excited to see some of these matchups, and you know, this all started working with you, covering the college guys and doing the rankings and stuff like that. But you'd be crazy not to pay attention to high school because, you know, usually the best high school kids are the ones that end up being ranked and doing well in college right away. So, and I think the team part of it's really cool. Like, kids get fired up for the duels. Nobody's keeping track of the team scores in Fargo. You know, it's just you go out, win your match, get your Gatorade, get ready, you know, figure out on the next one if you're red or blue, switch your singlet, and get ready to go. You know, these guys here, the team thing's really cool. And I actually think it's going to be a little bit easier to get interviews that way because you can, you know, you're not running around all over the place. If I want to watch Ohio versus Missouri and watch, you know, Max Darrow wrestle Kevin Vo, I can get that match and I can, you know, get an interview afterwards. So and I got a lot of friends in Oklahoma. I'm just excited to go. It's going to be really, really fun.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this week, but one more topic that we want to touch on before we put this one to bed. David, Russian Nationals last week. Abdul Rashid Sadjalayev, 3-time world and Olympic champ. The Russian phenom won the world championships at, 18, I think, when he won his first senior level world title.
Right.
He got pushed to the limit. Did you get a chance to watch that match in the finals, the 8-7 match that he had in the finals of the Russian Nationals?
Yeah, and those guys are just built like houses, man. It's going to be interesting watching him. Hopefully, now, am I correct that he's not going to get seeded at the World Championships? Is that how that's going to shake out?
Correct.
So theoretically, he could draw into Snyder in the first round, right?
Yeah, my understanding. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of like Snyder a couple years ago in the D1s, where really you didn't know if they were going to seed him because it didn't seem like they had enough criteria, and they ended up, I think, doing the fair thing and seeding him second, behind Gwiz. It seems like it's maybe Snyder's a little bigger. I certainly think Parterre favors Sajalayev. I certainly think cardio favors Snyder. I mean, I think it comes down to, Snyder, can he get his finishes and really get Sajalayev tired? And let's say Sajalayev maybe he's got some better techniques early. Can Snyder just give up ones or just give up twos and not give up, take down gut, where it's just so hard to come back?
Yep.
But it's going to be fascinating, right? I mean, like it's a chess match, and, if you and I kind of know how it's going to go, I'm sure these guys maybe have a little bit, deeper game plan than we do. So I think it'll be really cool to watch.
I mean, how far back do you have to go to find United States, Russia individual matchup that's been this, the hype has surrounded it like this for months, years even. I mean, we were talking about this after both guys won in Vegas. Would we one day see Sajalayev move up and wrestling Snyder?
I think the last matchup this hype was Rocky IV, right? Drago and Rocky.
It might be.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be super cool, man. Like, just, and we talked about Snyder last week, and the guy's his poise or maturity or growth or development or whatever word you want to use to describe him, he's just ultra impressive. And just, there's no situation that's too big for him. And I think he's got that trait that all great champions have. They welcome competition. Like, I've been around a lot of guys in the fight game, and they don't want to fight certain guys. They look for ways out. Guys like him, guys like I had Randy Couture on, that guy fought the best anytime, anywhere, any place. And like that, and they don't, if you don't think that way, they don't understand you. That's just how they think. So I think that's super cool, and I think I would guess this would probably not be the first or last, it would be the first, but not the last time those two would wrestle. I mean, I don't see Sajalayev going down, and I don't see Snyder going up to 125. There's no reason for him to. So I think these guys are going to be in each other's way for a while.
Well, one thing that could throw a wrench into things is the new weight classes and what those look like, and that'll be certainly interesting, something to keep an eye on in the months ahead, what those weight classes look like and who goes where. But, neither one of them seems like a guy who backs down from a challenge, and I could certainly see this being a fun rivalry for years and years to come. I think it'd be great for international wrestling to have something like this where people are keeping an eye on it. You talk about some of these other sports and you get into the Olympics and track and field and swimming. And one thing that sells is a good rivalry. Conflict always sells, right? So,
he would say Russia doesn't hurt either. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that's I think that would be tremendous for international wrestling. We've talked about how that just has not the interest at the international level isn't quite the same as it is at the college level, and this could be something that potentially could help change that. So
and
David,
you made a really good.
Week?
Well, you made a really good point about the weight classes, and that might happen, but definitely in 2020, those weight classes aren't going to change. So, the only other thing I have is I have Randy Couture coming on Matt Chat this Friday, and right now I have John Smith scheduled for a video 1-hour interview in his office in Stillwater on Sunday, so that would come out the following Friday. So say a prayer for me. You know, you're the journalist of the year. I'm a little nervous about sitting there and making sure I don't screw it up on video. But, you know, John Smith's always been really gracious to me and my family, and I'm pretty excited about that opportunity.
I tell you what, I'm jealous. I thoroughly enjoy the opportunities to sit down and talk wrestling with John Smith. I think it's fascinating stuff, and he's got such an interesting take on so many different things, and he looks at it so many different ways. You know, some of the most interesting conversations I've had, one-on-one conversations that I've had, like in the last 5 years. I think back to a couple of them with John Smith. You know, the opportunity to sit in his office down in Stillwater. Yeah. And really pick his brain on some things. You know, I was down there covering an Iowa-Oklahoma State duel and got the chance to visit with him for a while. And actually, I think that might have actually been Tom Brands' first year. So it's, you know, we're talking 10, 11 years now. But, you know, also up in Madison here a couple years ago at the World Team Trials. So certainly envious of you having that opportunity, but definitely glad that you're on our team and you're going to be bringing that one. So, are you taking suggestions on questions? I
was going to say, don't be afraid
from the public.
Don't be afraid to send me some good questions, boss. I'll take them. So yeah, either the public. Once I confirm it with Coach, I talked to him last week and he said yes, and I'm supposed to call him Wednesday and just confirm the time, and then I'll put it on my Facebook page. But I'll tag you, and then, you know, if you want to put it up on Track Wrestling's, I'd love to get some great questions. I mean, it's, you know, I got a chance to sit and actually have dinner and talk with Coach for about an hour and a half at the Big 12s. You know, I hope it's just like that. I hope it's literally just sitting at the bar and talking and getting his read on things. Like you said, the guy thinks differently than most of us do. So, you know, he's seen so much, and, you know, and it's, you know, he's at a different stage of his life now. He hasn't competed for a long time. He's coaching his son, you know, I mean, all these different kind of things are going on. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. I'm really, really, excited, a little nervous, but, you know, I'm going to try not to screw it up. That's my motto. So.
Awesome. Just try not to screw it up.
That's right.
Good words for all of us, right?
That's my life. Try not to screw up today.
Yeah. Well, David Mirikitani, thank you as always for your time and insight.
Always my pleasure, Andy.
And that'll do it for this week's edition of Weighing In with Andy Hamilton and David Mirikitani. Thank you for listening.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.